Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and today is what I call Mindset Monday. Mindset Monday is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to talk about whatever it is we want to talk about. And today we are talking about the struggle of Blacks in the military, the struggle of Blacks in the military. I actually was having a conversation with a white gentleman, and he said that he thought this was a topic that I should cover. So I have been searching high and low for someone to have this talk with, and I found her all the way in Denver, Colorado, of all places. And so I'm super excited to have Miss Ashley Fennell with me tonight. But before I introduce her and bring her on the stage with me, if you will, I see you all putting some greetings in here. Tell us what city and state you are tuning in from so we can give you a shout out. I see you, my sister Judy, right here in Tally Ho. Thank you for tuning in. And my sister Maya, she has been faithful. It's been right here. So I appreciate that, Maya. Thank you so much. Judy, you in Georgia now? Okay. Well, that's good. It's a good thing. Good to see you, though. Glad you are on here with us tonight. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on the Greater Works Network via Roku TV or Roku TV via Greater Works Network. And so please let folks know they need to tune in, tag them, tell them, come on, get in here because we are going to have a great conversation. This is an interactive live, and we absolutely expect to hear from you. As you are tuning in, I want to know how many military folks do we have out there? Anybody that has that was enlisted or is currently enlisted, tag your enlisted friends. Tell them they need to be in here so they can be a part of this conversation. I see you, Mom. My mom down in Miami. Thank you for being here. And E, who's from Colorado? My guess, she's not from Colorado, but she's based in Colorado right now. She's actually a military wife. So we're going to hear all about it. That makes her qualified, partially qualified. Also, she is a licensed clinician to talk around this topic. And she enjoys talking to the military folks that need counseling and therapy. All right, we got Latasha from Niagara Falls. Thank you for being here. And greetings, my sister Jamil. I've missed you so. I know you've been busy doing great and wonderful things, but thank you for being here tonight. Mr. Juan Collins here in Tally Ho. Thank you, thank you. Grandson thinking about going into the military. Okay, so he absolutely needs to listen to this. And my godmom in Miami, thank you for being here. And Mr. Michael Cork, thank you for being here right here in Tally Ho. Michael Cork is the host of the Hallelujah Morning Show on 95.3 FM. So thank you for tuning in tonight. We got Ozzy, Virginia Beach. Thank you, Ozzy. Appreciate you. Ozzy is a clinician over in the VA. So I am going to read a little bit of my guest bio. Miss Ashley Fennell holds an LPCC, licensed professional counselor candidate, and is currently a full-time psychotherapist at Insight Counseling and Wellness Center in Denver, Colorado. She also holds her NCC certification, is a member of Chi Sigma Iota National Counseling Honor Society, the National Association of Black Counselors, and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Okay, now that I see that, that might explain the blue hair, right? Anyway, she bases her theoretical orientation primarily in womanist narrative and existential theories and often implements elements of person centered and cognitive behavioral therapy to assist her clients in increasing their self awareness while empowering them to take up full space in this world as their unapologetic and authentic selves. Ashley works with individuals and couples and aims to specifically work with the Black, LGBTQ, and military communities, as these communities are the most underserved and underrepresented in the areas of mental health. She also strives to deconstruct the foundations of what has long been a field built by and for middle class white society in order to better prepare BIPOC clinicians and better serve BIPOC and other minority populations. Her future aspirations include becoming certified in both sex therapy and psychedelic assisted therapy. So, y'all help me welcome Miss Ashley Fennell. Yay!
Hey.
Welcome, welcome, Ashley.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks for being here.
You are very welcome. I am so appreciative of the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, you and I connected via Miss Isis.
Yep.
Isis is over in Arkansas. Isis has been connecting me with a bunch of folks. I told them I have to come on over there because I'm meeting all these new therapy friends. And while you are in Denver and getting ready to relocate, I know you'll introduce me to some great and wonderful folks that I can connect with and get on the show as well. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you
So
so much.
tell the folks, who is Ashley? Not what you do, but who is Ashley Fennell?
Now, see, I knew you were going to ask that question because you told me, and I thought about it. That's one of the hardest questions for people to answer. I use that one with my
Mhm.
clients a lot. Tell me who you are and not what you do.
Yes.
So if I had to tell you who I am a very passionate, unapologetic, super opinionated Black woman living in a world where I have to decompress daily from daily stressors, but having the support system that I need to do so. Um, I'm a mother of four, all 14 and under, so I got smaller children, and a wife to a soon to be major in the U.S. Army. I'm originally from Niagara Falls, New York. My whole family still resides there pretty much. And I'm just taking up space in this world. That is who I aim to, that is what I aim to do. And I aim to show up as my authentic Black self.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So, how did you get involved with counseling and therapy?
Whew, so let me shorten that little story for you because that's a
Hmm.
longer story. So the main reason why I went in therapy, because originally I went to college and I said I want to be a neurosurgeon. I got to organic chemistry and I said it ain't that probably ain't for me. Maybe that's not
Listen,
for me.
organic has stopped many a person, so I get it.
Exactly. I said maybe that's not for me. But what really pushed me when I decided to go back to school, to go into the counseling field, is that I had an uncle who dealt with mental health issues. And I remember having a conversation with him once in regards to seeking therapy. And he said his words to me were, until I can find somebody who looks like me, I'm not going.
Mm,
So that stuck with me. That was like, So I'm like, okay, let's find somebody. I went on a research journey of my own. Like, let's find somebody who looks like you. Let's find a Black male therapist or a Black woman therapist. And when I tell you, it was that this was about, this was a good 10, 15 years ago, maybe.
hmm.
And when I tell you the struggle with trying to find him a Black therapist near my hometown, because at that time we weren't dealing with COVID, so nobody was doing telehealth like that. So it was all in
Mm.
person. To find a Black therapist close by, like the closest therapist that I could find were in New York City, and that's 8 hours from us.
Wow.
So it was a struggle. And I was like, okay. So I thought back when I decided to go back to school, I thought back to that moment and I said, you know what? I'll be the representation because we need more of us. And my ultimate goal was always to help people. Being a neurosurgeon was because I wanted to save lives. And I don't think people realize how much you can save lives helping them in the mental health area.
Hmm. Wow. Great story. Great story. So, how's the journey been for you thus far?
Ooh, it's been a journey. It's had its ups and downs, but overall, it's something that my passion has not waned for from the moment 5 years ago that I decided I wanted to do it. It has not waned. I have difficult sessions and it's emotionally draining at times, and you put a lot into it, but it's that one thing where I'm like, no matter how hard it is, I have to keep doing it. I'm going to do it anyway. So it's been a journey, especially I went back for my master's because you need your master's to get licensed. I went
Mm-hmm.
back to my master's with 4 children. My youngest
Mm,
time was, well, Asa was 4 years of 5,
okay.
3. It was 3 when I went back.
Wow.
My youngest was 3, and I had 4 children, a military husband, and I made it work. I was like, if I can get through school, I can do the job.
Okay.
I can do school with 4 kids in the house and taking care of everything I have to, then I can do this job.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to juggle. All right. Well, before we dive into our topic, I got a little disclaimer that I like to read, especially since I have a clinician on the line. So, all topics past, present, and future on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or any answer to any personal issue related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. So there, I said it. All right. So we're talking about the struggles of blacks in the military. So I want to start out by talking about a movie that I saw a few years back called Black and Blue.
Mhm.
You familiar with that one?
I think I remember seeing previews or trailers for it, but I never watched it. I've watched a lot
So
of stuff.
so the short of this story was about a black female officer who really didn't fit in because she wasn't fitting in on the force because of some of the white male officers and the corruption that they had going on, and she didn't fit in her neighborhood. Now she was ex-military and she came back home to work in law enforcement, but she didn't fit in the neighborhood because they didn't trust her
Mhm,
because she was the
mhm,
police. And
mhm,
so, I think about that when I think about black military in particular, because while, you are there to protect and serve, sometimes the treatment that you get in service by those who are supposed to be your military brothers and sisters is not so great. And
mhm,
then, on the flip side of that, of course, you are trying to enforce the laws, and yeah, sometimes that's not so great. So, when you're dealing with your kinfolk.
mhm.
Hold on. E is asking, yes, Tyrese was in that movie, yes. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think about that when I think about blacks in the military and that being a big part of their struggle. So, give me your take on that in terms of blacks in the military and some of the challenges that they are faced with just because they're black.
Okay, that's a broad question there, but I think I can answer it pretty.
Okay.
Let me give a disclaimer first too, because
Hmm.
we're talking about the military and my husband is military. Anything I say is my opinion, unless I tell you it's based on some like facts or some articles. My opinion, it is not affiliated with the military. I have to say that because they will
Hmm.
try to say, "Oh, she's speaking for the military." No, I'm not. I'm not speaking for everyone in the military. We all have different experiences. We are not a monolith. The black people in the military and black military spouses are not a monolith. We have different experiences, but there are a lot of things that we have a common bond with.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, so, as far as that question goes, historically, if we just take it back to history in America, if you go back to the Civil War, you had black military fighting in a country that considered them 3/5 of a person. We want you to fight for us, but you're not a whole human being.
Hmm.
So we can't erase that foundation. There are mindsets that have never really erased that foundation. And we've seen that, especially recently, with all the things that have happened in society probably in the past, I'd say probably the past 16 years. Once Obama became president, we saw
Hmm.
it more. It kind of went under the radar for a minute and everybody tried to be politically correct, but then things started to come out, people's true colors. So with Blacks in the military, the struggle has always been being seen as equal to, being seen as good at, just as good as, um, and being seen as someone who can live in a country that once considered them less of a human being and still be patriotic and serve and love this country. So that's always a dilemma for Black people
Mhm.
who go into any type of military, police, law enforcement, any type of field in that area. You struggle mentally with, I am fighting for a country that might not have fought for me and that might not still fight for me. So that's a constant mental battle.
Very true.
Mhm.
So that definitely is the case. I would also like to add to that. I have seen cases where, or have seen stories or heard stories where Black officers or Black soldiers were put on the front line, thought to be expendable. And
Mhm.
so, and also were given very menial jobs, not given the opportunity to, you know, have
Mhm.
some of those more high profile jobs like your pilots and things of
Mhm.
that nature.
Mhm.
Now, of course, yes, that has changed over the years, but initially, like you said, the thought was, you're not equal.
Mhm.
So we're not going to treat you as such,
Mhm.
even though
And
you're putting your life on the line just like they are.
exactly. But you know what? I wouldn't even say, I would correct that in saying that it has changed over time. It has changed for, like, I would say, for performative purposes. You get that one or two,
Mhm,
three to say, here, we put somebody in this position. We put a Black man or a Black woman in this position. But there's been data recently, as of like the past 2 years, where they have, I think it was particularly in the Air Force, they ran the numbers, and it is still a practice that minorities are overrepresented in the administrative and supportive roles, not
mhm,
the higher roles, not those
mhm,
roles that are considered, more outstanding per se. So
mhm,
that is still a problem where you have, Black military officers who struggle to get promoted. You have Black people who are working in a secretarial role or in the kitchen roles or in, like,
mhm,
those same, that is still an overrepresentation to this day.
mhm. Okay. So I'm gonna pause here and see if we can get some weigh in from the viewers. So again, I asked initially, and some of you may have missed this when you were coming in. How many of you have either been in the military, are currently in the military, or have a spouse in the military? Just give me a thumbs up or a finger, a church finger, or wave your hand or something and let me know. Let me know, because I want to know who we talking to tonight. So currently in the military, formerly military, or have a spouse in the military. In the military. Okay, so we got a few people. Patricia. All right. Air Force. Thank you. A vet. All right. Juan. Thank you, Juan. 29 years. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank
Wow.
you. So okay, so let's move on in terms of you being the spouse of someone in the military.
Mhm.
Talk to me about that experiences and any challenges that may go along with that without being too personal.
Okay.
Mhm,
So of course the typical challenges that any military spouse deals with: living far away from home, being moved from everything, moving around a lot. When you bring
mhm,
children into it, they switch schools. Every military wife deals with that, or spouse, because there are military husbands as well and such, and gender neutral, all those things that we like
mhm,
to incorporate. But for me specifically, as a Black military spouse, um, you know what, I will use a story. It won't get too personal, but I'll just give you some background. When my
okay.
husband decided to join the military, he already had a college degree. So if you come in with a college degree, you go to basic training, you can go to officer candidate school, and you literally come in as an officer. So you skip enlisted. You are enlisted in basic training, but then you go to officer candidate school. If you get through that, you you're an officer, you're a second lieutenant, or the first lieutenant. I might have it backwards, but you're a lieutenant at that point. So for me, I had, several family members who were military tell me, be careful what you say. You are married to a Black officer, and he will get in trouble based off of things you say.
Mm.
And then I had a cousin who was Air Force, and she told me, she said, listen, you probably gonna get along better with the enlisted spouses as opposed to the officer spouses, because they have an air about them, and it's not a lot of us in that group.
Mm.
So when I got to our first base, we were at Fort Benning, Georgia, in Columbus, Georgia, and there used to be an officer wives group, and the officers' wives would have a coffee, and this was to meet all of the new officer wives. So my husband tells me about it. He was like, you should go and try to meet some people, because we far away from our family. Just try to befriend some people, basically. So I said, okay, I'm fine. I'm an extroverted person. I'm fine. When I tell you, I walked in that officer's coffee, which was held at one of the, I think, the commander's houses. His wife held it. I was the only Black face, the only, which I'm not uncomfortable with, because I grew up in an area that's kind of really mixed, but it's a little bit more, at the time, it was a little bit more white than anything else. So I had white friends growing up. I've never had an issue like assimilating into a white space. But because what my cousins and my family members were saying to me played in my mind, I could not relax. I could not drop into who I actually was, because I was afraid if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, that's going to affect my husband and his career. So that is a constant thing that I'm thinking about early on as a Black military spouse. Now, my husband is, everybody who knows him knows he is straight cut, very straight to the point. I said this to him, what my family said. He said, do I not fight for your freedom of speech? You say whatever you want to say. And I said, okay, now you saying that, but you're a Black officer. I do not want to do anything that would jeopardize your career. And he was like, look, if you can't say what you want to say, you're not in the military. You didn't sign that dotted line. If you can't say what you want to say, what am I fighting for?
Okay.
So I have toggled with those two mindsets my entire time as a military spouse.
All right. Well, so I'm kind of curious then, since you put that out there. And hold on, before I ask my question, a point that E is making, it said that should be noted that the head of the Department of Defense is a Black man, Lloyd Austin. He's the first Black person appointed and took the position in 2021. Wow.
Yes, indeed. That should be acknowledged. That should be celebrated. But me being who I am, why did that take until 2021 to occur?
I was about to say the same thing. We still celebrating first.
Right. There's no way we should celebrating first when we've been over here over 400 plus years.
Still celebrating first. But thank you for that note, E. So I guess I'm curious, and I would like to hear from the viewers. And thank you for those of you who chimed in about your service or the service of your spouse. Have any of you felt like you had to hold your tongue because of, being in the service, and maybe there be some repercussions for you speaking out, or being thought to be uppity or whatever the case may be. So if you're willing to share, again, this is a safe space, so I want you to feel free to communicate. But yeah, I'm curious, if some folks are challenged with that. I think, in the age that we're in currently, I feel like we are a little bit more freer to express ourselves, while maybe we weren't before, because of feeling like there might be some retaliation, or something negative that would come about as a result. So Juan said no, he never did. Okay, good. That's good to know. That's good to know. All right. Well, I know it can be challenging sometimes, maybe when you are outnumbered, or may feel like you're outnumbered, or maybe you may feel like your voice won't be heard. You won't be taken seriously.
Yes.
Yeah. So
My husband actually would agree with Juan. He'll tell anybody, I don't feel like I have to hold my tongue or do any of that. I'm gonna be who I am, because who I am is never gonna step outside the realms of professionalism anyway.
mhm.
But then we can get into a whole discussion about professionalism being rooted in white supremacy too. But that's that's another topic for another day.
Okay.
But yes, some you'll get, like I said, it's not a monolith. You will get some black or other people of color in the military who will tell you, no, I always was who I was. I said what I wanted to say. I
Mhm,
didn't face any repercussions for it. But then you have to, I always ask, well, what exactly were you saying? Like
mhm.
what were you speaking out for or speaking out against? Like
Right.
what, because things come up just like in any other job. Things
Mm,
come up in the workplace for the military too.
mhm,
They have their opinions, they have their thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs. But one thing that makes them different from a civilian is, one, if they are in uniform, there are certain things they cannot say.
mm,
That's just period, point blank. If they are in uniform, there are certain things they cannot say.
mm,
They are told to be very careful on their social media.
mhm,
These things are not things that we as regular civilians have to deal with per se. Like
mhm,
there's certain things we know we can't say, like you can get in trouble if you say something threatening to the president
mhm,
publicly, that you can get in trouble, whether civilian or military. But
mhm.
they have to be, often they do have to be a bit more careful. They have rules and regulations surrounding what they can do. Like my husband can't go put on his uniform and go to a Black Lives Matter rally
Right.
unless he's working, unless it's like he's actively working. But if
Mhm,
he can't do that. He could do it in plain clothes, but even that's a risk, especially with
mhm.
his rank. That's a
Right.
risk. So there are certain things that, even if you never felt that way, you may have never confronted a situation where you
Mhm,
had to go against the grain.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, so, and I think that's a really good example of that whole kind of being torn, because you may have strong feelings about, being Black and wanting to speak up and stand out, but your position within that particular vocation may prohibit that.
Yeah.
So that is again something to consider. We got Mr. Willie Carter who's speaking up and said he always spoke his mind, but with tact. So, you know, I get that. I
That's
get
my
that.
cousin. Let me
Oh,
just,
is it? Okay.
that's my
Hey,
cousin.
hey, cousin Willie. All
Uh,
right, but so that just there's always a way to do things, right? And you
yes.
want to do it such that your point gets across, but you don't have to be ugly and rude and nasty
Correct.
about it. All right,
Correct.
Juan said, I was a military lawyer, and when people ask me about the military experience, I explain to them that the military is a subset of society. So the same problems you have in the society, you also have in the military, such as racism, sexism, etc. Okay.
Yes, he is absolutely right. That's with any subset. That same thing
Mhm.
shows up in church, in the military, in other workplaces, shows up everywhere. People are
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, people are people. You're right. Thank you, Juan, for sharing that. I think that's that was well said. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes our perspective about military and military life can be, skewed to maybe what we see on in the media or in movies and that sort of thing. And so, I'm just curious about maybe some of the pressures that servicemen and women, Black servicemen and women in particular, might feel or sense. And maybe, since Ashley, you counsel,
Mhm.
servicemen and women, do
Mhm.
you have you maybe run across those that feel a great sense of pressure? Like they are maybe being scrutinized a little bit tougher, or that feel like they gotta do well, or they have to be twice as hard, or I mean twice as good, or
Mhm.
they just can't fail or anything like that. Do you experience some of that with the clientele that you serve?
Yes, absolutely. I have worked with several active military reserves and veterans. And with the clients that I see, they are dealing with high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, high levels of stress. If they've been in combat, you're now dealing with PTSD. They are living this the same thing that everybody else in the military is living, on top of dealing with racial trauma, on top of dealing with, you know, people having a perception of them because they are Black and they are serving in this American military, this US military. They have to struggle with, you know, people think I sold out, or especially in our community. Now you do have people, I'm not one of those people. I feel like if you want to serve, good. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But I can't pretend like, as a Black woman in this country, I haven't had that thought. Like, especially when we dealt with situations like George Floyd and Trayvon Martin and all the things that we've seen that we've almost become desensitized to. When you see that, it's like, is this country for everybody or no? Like, this is what I know you are fighting for and what you want, but there are things that we still experience and deal with that still have to be fought for. And I'll never forget, I saw during I think it was during the George Floyd trial, there was a march, and there was a woman who was 96 years old at that march holding a sign that said, "I am tired of fighting for the same thing." And that resonated. I'm like, oh my God, this woman has seen history that some of us only read about in books, and she is tired. And you would think, like, okay, our military fights for our freedoms. Yes, but what about our equal rights? We can't pretend like everything is equal. We can't just ignore it.
So I'm going to see if I can put this question together. So the military, our Black military in particular, is fighting for our freedoms, yet we aren't free in some cases here in America, right? They're, you know, like that example that you're saying, you know, 96 years, and she's tired of fighting for the same civil rights, equal rights. So I don't know, how do you reconcile that? And I'm not asking you, Ashley, but I'm actually kind of asking the viewers who, you know, have been in the military, who serve. Like, how do you reconcile it? Like, how do you reconcile fighting in a military for a country that doesn't want to extend civil rights, equal rights to you?
Yeah, especially when the more I think about that question, especially when we've seen, what was that, last year? There was a video of a Black military man in uniform who got maced or pepper sprayed by an officer at his car at the gas station, I believe, or something like that. And that officer, of course, got put on paid administrative leave or whatever that is. But it was like, a lot of times we think if they're in uniform, they'll be respected. They will be respected if they're in uniform. But outside of that uniform, they are the average typical Black man or woman in this country. But that's not always the case. I remember my I can't remember who said it, but we're military, so we travel a lot driving. We travel from state to state driving, and we were driving somewhere. I think we might have been in South Carolina, and we were talking. And I said, somebody told me if you get pulled over, you make sure you pull out your military ID first, not your license. So that way they can see he's military. But then we got to a conversation, me and my husband. He was like, but depending on that officer, if I pull out that military ID, he could think that I'm uppity or I'm or trying to, you know, show that I'm greater than. I said, you know what, you're right. There's a flip side to it. So there's always this tension. There's always two mentalities that we are struggling with in this military space.
Yeah. So that's something. I mean, you know, again, we probably lay people don't think about that so much as it relates to, again, our Black servicemen and women, but yeah, that those are challenges that they are faced with. Challenges that they are faced with. Now, you mentioned anxiety and depression. And so I know you and I previously had talked about death by suicide amongst, you know, military period, but, you know, Black military. So, I have found, or at least have been told more recently, that the death by suicide numbers for service persons, typically we don't really hear about those much, but it does happen.
It
And
absolutely happens.
mhm.
Mhm.
So I just wanted you to kind of speak to that a little bit in terms of, their ability to cope and that sort of thing.
So the struggle, especially that I hear from people who are in the military, the struggle with that, it is significantly, I don't want to use the term worse, but it's significantly more impactful for people in the military to show vulnerability and weakness. And that is perceived, like if you are struggling like that and can't cope on your own, it's perceived as a weakness.
Mhm.
And you can't be weak in the military.
Mhm.
But we have seen consistently these numbers rise for suicide in the military. And that's one thing that you can, most of the stuff I'm saying, you could Google it and it'll pop right up. So that way, I can't get in trouble for saying certain things. But if you were to look it up, it has been a long-standing tradition for the military to sweep certain things under the rug, to not acknowledge certain things until they have to, until it's like really, they're really forced to acknowledge it. So you don't hear so much about that suicide rate within the military because it's not something that they want people to focus on.
Mhm.
But when you consider, what you do often hear is a lot of military vets struggle with PTSD, especially if they were in combat. You hear
Mhm.
that's something that everybody hears. The veterans have there's a lot of veterans with PTSD. But what you don't hear is people with PTSD have a high suicide rate. So you
Mhm.
can't disconnect the two, they're correlated. So if you're telling me 45% of veterans who have gone into combat have PTSD, then I'm going to, as a mental health provider, I'm going to say, okay, well, then that means at least 20% have attempted suicide.
Mhm.
It's something that's not talked about enough. They are trying. I will say the military is trying to get more mental health into that world and having discussions and trying to do that, but it's just it's it's almost counterproductive to what the military is supposed to be. These
Mhm.
are your strongest, these are your brightest, these are the ones defending your country. You don't want somebody defending your country to be in that mental state of mind.
Mhm.
So it's kept in. But the rates over the years, I've looked it up and the numbers vary depending on where you look, but it
Mhm.
has gone up, especially among military members of color. It has gone up at least tenfold in the past
Mhm.
5 to 10 years, if
Wow.
not more.
Okay. So we got a few comments that I want to share. Uh, Willie said, "If we don't fight for this country, we won't have a country for Black people to grow." And so that was in response to my earlier question. But he also gave a comment with regards to pulling out his military ID,
Hmm.
pulled over by a cop, and the cop said, "Why the hell you gave this?" Mm.
It can go either way. It
It
really
can
can.
go either way. It can go either way. We got Mr. Kenneth Tate on, and he said Black servicemen were lynched in their uniforms when they came home from World War One during Jim Crow. They were called uppity for serving their country.
Hmm. And see, that's my thing. We cannot erase history. We can't erase the foundations of this country. We can't ignore it either because it's still prevalent. There are mindsets that still believe we're uppity and we don't deserve certain things. We don't deserve to be in certain positions. So we can't ignore the fact that Black men were lynched in uniform. We can't ignore the fact that when Black men did go overseas to fight, they stayed overseas because they got treated better there than in the very country they were fighting for. We
Mm-hmm.
can't just sit here and pretend like that those mindsets still don't exist. We've literally seen it in
Yeah,
these past presidential elections. We have seen it. We have
for
seen
sure.
people who look at us as less than. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, if we that what my cousin Willie said, if we don't fight for this country, we won't have a country to grow in. How much have we really grown when we're still celebrating first for Black people in the military in 2021?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't signify a good amount of growth to me. Yes, we've grown. Yes, we are not in the same position we were in 200 years ago or even 50 years ago, but it's still not enough. And we get to say it's not enough. We get to say this is not enough.
Indeed, we do. You're right. All right. Ozzy said he spent 9 months in Afghanistan and Iraq with the SEAL team and gathered myself and said, What are we here really fighting for?" It changed my focus. The issues are the support back home while you are out in the field. That is the main issue. So, talk to me about how important support is for the service person, the black
Um,
person in particular.
Support for all service members is important, but particularly for Black service members, yes, it is crucial that they have a support system that allows them to, one, just exist, and B, like when my husband comes in from work, unless he wants to talk about work, I often won't ask him. Now, in a normal relationship, you ask, "How was your day, honey? How was work?" I don't. Unless he talks to me about work, I am not going to ask him about work.
Because he has, if he tell you, he got to kill you, right?
He not that classified just yet. And there are things that he doesn't tell me. There are things he can't tell me. There are things that I don't know about, but he does vent like everybody needs to. Everybody needs a space to vent, which is why you need support. They need support within the military and outside of it, because that's another thing that came up in an article I was recently reading in regards to the Air Force. An airman said when he I think he got promoted. And he said he had talked to someone higher ranking than him who was also a Black man, and he told him, yeah, that's great, but you're not gonna be viewed the same. You still gonna have to put in twice the work, and it's gonna be harder for you to get to that next promotion than it will be for anybody else." So that even him being able to be honest with him, to have somebody be honest with you in that respect is important, because you could come in thinking, "Oh, I'm serving my country. I'll be treated just like everybody else. I'll be looked at like this great upstanding person," when in reality, you still probably won't.
Wow.
So they need that support. They need support at home. They need support within the military. They need to know that I can lay all of this down. I can just lay this down for a moment and not even have to think about it.
So, is counseling recommended in the military, or is that looked upon as weakness?
So you know what's funny? It's a two-edged sword. Like I said, the military is trying to push more for it, but you can't push for it after years of making people feel like that's a weakness. You're supposed to be stronger than that. You're supposed to be hope and get yourself together. So now you're telling them the exact opposite. For somebody who's been in the military, let's say 25, 30 plus years, what they got when they first came in is not what they're being told now. And you can't just shift the mindset like that. You pumped into their mind, handle it, deal with it, be strong. You've done that. So now they don't know how to be vulnerable or weak. They don't even know how. So yes, therapy is great for anybody in the military. It's great for anybody in general, but to get them to come, because I have had military members say, "I can't go to therapy. It's going to look like a flag on my profile."
Really?
It'll be a flag on my profile. It'll look bad if it shows that I went to behavioral health. And I'm like, huh?
Okay, that's interesting. All right. So the stigma.
Yes.
The stigma. The stigma.
And you got to think it's pretty much a double stigma for a Black military member, because it's the stigma of the military, and it's also the stigma of mental health in the Black community. That is getting better, but most of us grew up where you don't go to therapy unless you're crazy. You don't get on medication unless you're crazy. You don't do this. You don't talk to people about your personal business. You don't know that person. That's a stranger to you. You don't share those things.
Right.
So we have that double-edged sort of therapy wasn't pressed upon us growing up. And then we get into a field where it's looked down upon.
Yeah, Ozzy said counseling wasn't spoken about unless it was dealing with a career move when I was in.
Yes, career counseling is different, and that's pressed, because that's about, counseling to see what you want to do with your career. Like, there are career counselors, and that's a totally different avenue than your regular psychotherapists and mental health counselors. Career counseling is not about your emotions. It's about what you do and what you want to do. It's about aspirations and goals to get to where you want to be, the steps to take. So that's fine. It's fine to talk about that because that's looked at as great. You're concerned about your forward progress. But that's very different than sitting with somebody and saying, I don't know if I can go on another day.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk around, some of the typical things that you see in the movies around military. So, oftentimes you see there's a lot of alcoholism that goes on. You see, some domestic violence sometimes that goes on. And I'm speaking in like exaggerated generalities. But I guess because of the pressures and things of that nature, it's like you take this out on your loved one, right? You result to alcoholism because you're trying to deaden the pain and forget your troubles and all that sort of thing. So are those, is that kind of true to life in terms of some of what you see, some of the clients that you deal with? Or
Yes, I would say that is true to life. I mean, I know movies and shows over exaggerate. Anytime we watch a movie or a show with anything military in it, my husband will sit there and point out that's not accurate. That would never happen because he knows. But as far as that part of it, yes, there are so many military members who struggle with substance use. There are so many military members that deal with domestic violence, and domestic violence is even more. I mean, you have on every military installation, there's a unit that works with domestic violence. Like they have advocates. They have domestic violence advocates on post at every base. But a big thing is a lot of people are afraid to go talk to them for various reasons. They don't want to get their spouse in trouble. They don't want to. But on the flip side, you hear so many. I'm in a lot of different military spouse groups on social media, and you hear so many people who say, even if you tell, they're not going to do anything about it. It's going to be a slap on the wrist. It's going to be a write-up. They might lose. They might get demoted, but nothing's going to actually happen. So you have that mindset where nothing will happen if I go and voice that something is going on in my home. And then you have as far as substance use, that's just like any other career. You don't want nobody to know that you're drinking or doing anything because you know it will impact your career. So they don't open up about that. They deal with it on their own. They do random drug testing in the military.
Do they?
They do random drug testing. At least I know where my husband currently is stationed at the military and processing center here in Denver. So he pretty much swears the new people in.
Okay.
So I know for sure they do it where he is, and I'm assuming they do it in every other avenue. But the problem with that is you can't test for alcohol. To my knowledge, there's not an accurate test for alcohol. Most of your drug tests are testing for marijuana, heroin, like hardcore drugs, things like that. But the flip side of that is certain things get out of your system faster. So if somebody is using cocaine, that goes out of your system much faster than marijuana. So you probably won't get caught. So you have a lot of military members who do engage, and they don't test often, and it is random, so you never know, but they can kind of get away with it for a while.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So again, I think that cousin Willie.
Oh, what?
Let me see.
He outspoken just like me. That's where I get it from.
That's where you get it from, cousin Willie.
All of my family is outspoken.
All right. No, that was Juan that said that it's a subset of society. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. In things that you're saying, I'm hearing it's a subset of society.
It is. It's no different. People have a misconception about military life. Like if I were to talk about the myths that people hold, they assume that we're rich. Y'all got money. The government paying y'all. There are military families who get food stamps. There are.
What?
Yes, there
are.
That's
surprising right there.
Yes, there are. There are military members who get assistance. There are military members who You got to remember, oftentimes, if you're married, your spouse struggles to work because you move so much. So it's a struggle for military spouses to find careers and jobs unless they can get something that moves with them, or they do something on the base as a civilian and they can get transferred.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you get into like government jobs, if you get into government jobs, you have a better chance of keeping a job every time you move. But for most people, for most spouses, it's hard to find work. This is why a lot of military spouses stay home. Because it's like, I can't. So in the world we live in now, not many people can live off of one income.
Mm-hmm.
So we are not rich. No, we're not rich. And it's not a situation like, the one benefit I will say is you do get to move around and see different places. That's a benefit if you like to, see different places. But it's also a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of struggle. I remember saying one time when my husband was he went to Germany for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I had 4 little ones at home. This is the first time he left like that for work. And I'm like, I said, this is what single motherhood would feel like, because he's literally, I know he's coming back, but he's not here right now. For an entire year, I am doing this on my own. And somebody got really upset with me. They were like, you're not a single mother. It's not the same thing, because he's coming back and you still get his pay and all. I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm still doing the very same things my mother did as a single mother. I am taking care of this household every day, and he is not here. I can't call on him to come wash the dishes, to cook dinner tonight, any of that. So I am experiencing that, even though it's not going to be what I experience forever. I get to experience these different ways of being as a military spouse.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. As I said, military life is high stress, the responsibility in high demand in service. My head is off to all those that serve.
Yes.
And ours too, Ozzy. Thank you for your service. And thank again all of you for your service who are on this live. So I'm trying to come to a happy ending in terms of what can be done. So one of the takeaways that I got is definitely to support your service man, woman, your service person, right? Any other takeaways that we can glean from our conversation?
One big one I would say is, do not assume anything with a person of color in the military. Don't assume that they think a certain way, or that they believe a certain thing. Don't assume that they have it under control. A lot of people feel like the military is so regimented and structured. It teaches you how to, which it does teach regiment and structure, but that has nothing to do with trying to manage your emotions. You can't structure certain things. So recognize that a lot of the things you probably think about these servicemen and women is so far from the truth. And all you have to do is talk to more than one. Because like I said, it's not a monolith. Our experiences are different, but we do have shared commonalities. I'm in 2 military spouse groups for specifically Black military spouses. One is for Black military spouses. One is for Black officer wives, which is different. And the things that we discuss in these groups, because it feels it's a safe space, we know we can talk about it. These are things that we can't post on the regular spouse page, because they are not going to understand. So give service members that space they need to really be able to talk, and to really be able to vent, and to really just be able to exist. Like I said, they don't exist in the same way when they have that uniform on.
Okay. We got Mr. Solomon on. Solomon said, I just PCS. I don't know what that means. Solomon,
military move.
Okay. from Hawaii, and you see white women pregnant with three kids trailing behind them. Military wives tend to bring the most pressure to their husbands who are soldiers.
He's right. He's not wrong. And I will admit, when he first joined, I was just like that. I brought the stress because I'm stressed. And I want to vent to him about my stress, not considering what he's actually dealing with every day. So I had to take a step back and say, wait a minute, I know I'm stressed too, and we should be able to talk to each other about our stressors, but I need to support him differently right now. Like for right now, until he's more adjusted, I need to support him differently. So yeah, military spouses can be the stress point. They can.
Okay. Cousin Willie just broke it down for me. Thank you, Cousin Willie. Permanent change of state.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, thank you. You know, got the acronyms going on there. Wow. Okay, so support, don't assume, have the conversation.
Mhm, mhm.
Would you suggest that black military go to counseling?
I absolutely would. Like I said, it's a struggle with most people in general, but especially in this particular field, it is a struggle. But I would highly suggest it. And it doesn't even have to be. I think a lot of them fear. One of the biggest fears in general, for a lot of people in different fields, not even just the military, is if a
Mhm.
diagnosis goes on that paper, that diagnosis is going to it's going to place a stigma on them. Like
Mhm.
I can't have certain diagnosis and hold this position. Like
Mhm.
there are certain diagnoses where if they are diagnosed with that, they are not going to be able to carry a weapon.
Mhm.
So they have to battle with that in their mind. Like, do I get help for this issue or do I do my job?
Well, maybe you go to a clinician outside of your insurance. You know, maybe you.
Mm,
Ooh, is that not looked upon favorably?
that is not a favorable thing to do. That is actually
Okay.
hard to do for military. Yes, you can opt to take that risk of going to pay an outside provider out of pocket. But one, like we said, a lot of military members aren't rich. That self-pay fee for a lot of therapists is not cheap. So
That's
you have
true.
to consider they cannot afford to go outside of network.
Hmm. The struggles are real, boy. Wow. Okay. Hmm. Thank you, Lynette. All right. Solomon said they claim there will be no stigma. That's lies. Cousin
Great
Willie,
lie.
cousin Willie is co-signing on that too.
Straight lies. It is definitely a stigma. It's a stigma to go see a mental health provider or go to behavioral health in the military. That's just the truth. They can sit
Mm.
up here and say it all they want. No, it's not. We want you to go get help. Yeah, no, you don't. And it's going to be a stigma if I do.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know who we need to talk to, but we need to change that. I don't know how we're gonna do that, but it's you know, these are still human beings. If you go for security clearance, they ask the question and you cannot lie. Mm.
Yes, and getting promoted in certain positions, you have to have a security clearance in certain arenas. Like my husband is Signal Corps.
Mm-hmm.
He's had to have a security clearance before. And when they ask that question about have you seen, like they do a mental status exam, just like we do in my office, I give a mental
Mm-hmm.
status exam, or they will ask, have you seen gone to behavioral health for any reason? You might not get that security clearance. And if you need it for that job, now you won't have that job.
Mm.
So for them to continue to say it doesn't affect anything negatively or it's not a stigma, that's not
Mm-hmm.
true all the time.
Yeah. So that really is a struggle right there.
Mhm.
I see the conundrum. I see the conundrum. Lynette said it seems the military providers aren't great according to relatives. Ooh.
Ooh-wee. Now listen, I know some wonderful military providers in behavioral health. I do. I am not affiliated with military behavioral health because I refuse. I'm not I'm not dealing with that because I would still have to deal with a lot of different things if I
Right,
was connected with the military.
of course.
Um, so I'm in group private practice in civilian world, in the civilian
Mhm.
world. But yeah, you do hear that. I have clients right now who are like, I saw a behavioral health specialist on the base and no.
Mhm.
And then it's even harder in that realm to see one of color. It's
Mm,
not a lot of us in that realm. That
I
narrows the
bet.
pool down. So if they're seeking, and a lot of times, this comes up even for civilians. If you request a therapist of color, they won't filter the results for that. They'll
Mm,
just put you with whoever. They won't filter the results for a therapist of color.
okay.
So yeah, they do have that stereotype that military providers aren't always that great. I've come across some great military providers. I saw a therapist in behavioral health on the base when we lived in Louisiana. I was pregnant at the time. I was stressed out, high anxiety, depression, and I went and talked to somebody on
Hmm.
base, and she was great. She was white, but she was great.
Okay.
That is not always the case.
Right. Solomon said it's a stigma for all soldiers, but it's worse for black ones because we already have an automatic target on our back by being black. White folks get more of a pass whether they're in the wrong or right. Mm.
Yep. And like the one gentleman kept saying, it's a subset of society. That's
Mm.
literally the same thing that happens in the rest of society. Things look different for us. You could see white people destroying property after a sports event, and it's just they're rambunctious. You see black people doing something because they're upset and they're protesting, and they're looting and stealing and they're thugs. It's a whole different view
Mm-hmm.
just based on that difference of complexion.
Right. Oh, Ashley, you're making it tough for me to have a happy ending, ma'am.
I, listen, just know that I am hopeful. I'm trying to do my part to make the changes, but it is not easy.
Right.
It's hard to change things that have been set in stone for generations.
Generations and generations and generations. So, yeah, you are right. Well, I hope that we have learned some things tonight. And I think the main thing, as Ozzy kept reiterating, is the important thing is to support your service person at home, and just be there with them. Don't add any stress to their lives because they've got enough that they are continuing with day in and day out. Um, in the workplace and on the front line or wherever they might be, battling. So
Yes.
this has been quite interesting. Quite interesting. So Ashley, how can folks connect with you?
Oh, all right. Now, well, I am on Facebook and Instagram, so you can follow my pages. Um, it's at So Sweet Amore 09 on Instagram, and then you can just type my name and you should be able to find me on
Mhm.
Facebook. And also, if you were to look up Insight Counseling and Wellness Center in Denver, Colorado, my profile is on the website. You can find me that way. All of my contact information is there. Um,
Okay.
and I always tell people, if you need to reach out to me with with a mental health question, I am available. I just want people to know I can ask her, because oftentimes we feel like, who do I ask? You can ask me. I don't care if I know you. If you tell me I saw you on Conversations with Nicole and I just got a question, that's fine.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for extending yourself to the peoples in that way. So, for those of you who are new to the Conversation with Nicole platform, I invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are here every Monday and Wednesday rather, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, usually for about an hour, talking with Black and Brown clinicians. Wednesday, we have a sister out of Charlotte, Vanetta, and she is going to be talking about Blacks and autism awareness because April is Autism Awareness Month.
Mm.
Autism Awareness Month. So join me here on Wednesday at 8:30. We'll talk all things autism. If this was beneficial to you, if you learned something, I know I did, give me a thumbs up, church finger, waving hand, something. Let me know. Put it in the comments. Put it in the comments because I definitely learned some things tonight that I was not aware of. And thank you again to all the service persons on here.
Yes,
I just said great
yes.
conversation
Thank
and
you.
awareness. Yes. Um, cousin Willie, you were in the house tonight, brother. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
you.
supporting me, cousin.
Yes, appreciate you. Appreciate you. And again, all of the service folks, we really do appreciate your service and you contributing to tonight's conversation. Hopefully, it won't be your last time here with us. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's support our service, our Black servicemen and women, and tag a friend who should have been here on this conversation. Tag them and let them know.
Yes.
All right. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Juan. Thank you for contributing. You said outstanding topic and conversation. And cousin Willie said, "Much love, cousin."
Thank you. I appreciate that so many military people showed up for this one. I was
Indeed.
hoping that happened. I really appreciate that. And like I tell my clients at the end of every session, go out in this world and be great, You are appreciated, you are loved, you are supported, and continue to show yourself grace and compassion because we struggle in that area. Show yourself grace and compassion every day, and you
Amen.
get to just exist. There are
Okay.
spaces where you are able to just exist.
Okay. I'm taking that as a takeaway. Show yourself grace and compassion. Look, I'm searching, Ashley. This was a tough one.
That's why I ended. I was like, let me end on a better note.
Yes,
Show
please.
yourself grace and compassion daily. We are usually hardest on ourselves, and you do not have to be. You can take the capes off, you can lay the things down, and you can take care of you.
Amen. Amen. I gotta say, hey, thank you, Jamil, for being on here. Appreciate you. All right, so good people. Hopefully, we'll see you on Wednesday. Oh, I forgot. Tomorrow is Tuesday. We got Singles Mingle, where Kings Meet Queens will be on at 9 p.m. rather Eastern Time, and our topic is relationship drama. Blame your mama.
Oh,
We're talking about childhood, adverse childhood experiences, and childhood trauma, and how we need to uh, deal and heal and remove that relationship baggage before getting into relationships. So that's our topic. 9 o'clock, I'll be here with Nick Rains and Roz Wynn, and actually Dominique Battle, who was on about 2 weeks ago. The clinician, she'll be on. She's based in Central Florida, so she'll be on talking to our singles. So join that conversation. We'll be right here.
that's
All
gonna be
It should be. It should be. So Ashley, you might have to come on here.
I'm gonna watch it because listen,
All right.
I'm working with couples right now in that very arena, so I'm
Mhm.
watching.
Indeed, indeed. All right, good people. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.